Drag it back to our shores here now, though, and talk about Labour Party's conference in Liverpool. We all remember that, don't we? I was there, of course. Labour MPs, they were just falling over themselves to claim that the scourge of anti-Semitism has been purged out of the party, one after the other. They lined up and they said to me that we all stand with Israel, that, you know, absolutely, the old ghost of Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, because, of course, not being anti-Semitic and standing with Israel are apparently the same thing now. Apparently, to not be anti-Semitic, you have to explicitly stand with a state that doesn't indeed represent all Jews, because to imply that Israel represents all Jewish people, that would be anti-Semitic. So, bit of a weird statement from the airport.
Corbyn has gone, and there's fruity people outside Parliament waving the Palestinian flag and saying some rather interesting...
I mean, it's interesting you call 100,000 people fruity. If so many people are protesting against what our government is aiding and abetting on a global scale, right? If it's hundreds of thousands of people, then maybe you're the one that's out of touch here, Patrick, huh?
Things about Zionism, etc. They no longer represent the Labour Party. But, as events last week have shown, the cause of Palestinian solidarity is still a pressing issue in Starmer's party, as former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn addressed a rally, and that was outside Downing Street. But more importantly, we've had some other developments, OK? So Labour MPs were very quick to jump on these unverified claims that the blast at the Gaza hospital was an Israeli strike. It's the usual suspects, obviously. We've got John McDonnell and Zara Sultana. She's tweeting more than 500 people have been killed after an Israeli airstrike. Political leaders of all parties, including...
Yeah, the based members of the Labour Party.
I must call for an urgent ceasefire, and at a more local level. Keir Starmer has now had to write to a load of Labour councillors because they have criticised him, in fact some have resigned, over his stance on Israel, which is that they stand with Israel and call for a ceasefire.
No, they are resigning because of him not condemning the fact that the state of Israel is committing war crimes, like forced transfer, and his appeared support for them engaging in another war crime, which was the siege that he said that they had the right to do when speaking with Nick Ferrari. Whether or not standing with Israel, I don't give a shit. That means nothing to me. What really is important is his stance on whether or not they actually adhere to the quote-unquote rules-based order, which it doesn't appear that they have been, because exactly what I said about not calling out Israel for doing war crimes and giving tacit support for them committing war crimes when speaking with Nick Ferrari. It was nothing to do with the support for the two-state solution, nothing to do with the standing with Israel. It was about his response to the conflict.
Two-state solution. So I'm asking, can the Jewish community actually trust the Labour Party? With me now is Naomi Wimborne-Idrissi, a spokesperson for Jewish Voice for Labour. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show.
Nice to meet you,
just
Patrick.
ask it, really, I suppose. Do you think the Jewish community can trust Labour?
Well, I joined the Labour Party after a long pause in 2015 because I, like many Jews with my political perspective, were very encouraged by the appearance at the leadership of the Labour Party of somebody who shared our values. That is to do with equality and justice, to do with fairness, to do with support for public services, defending the NHS, rights for people at work, and peace on the international stage, and ethical foreign policy. We were very keen on those values. When Jeremy Corbyn was in the leadership, we found that all these subjects were open for discussion and debate. There was free and fair openness and respect for each other's views, and a lot of really interesting ideas were developed while Jeremy was leader. And as Jews, we felt very welcome.
Under Jeremy Corbyn?
Under Jeremy Corbyn. That
throughout?
Absolutely throughout.
Really?
Absolutely throughout, yes. The hostility that some of us faced came from people who were hostile to Corbyn.
Right.
Now, this is not well known. When Jeremy Corbyn was ousted, having failed in the 2019 election, after a very creditable performance in the 2017 election, because the ideas that he put forward, that we shared, won the confidence of a huge number of voters, as you will remember. Biggest increase in an opposition party's vote since 1945.
Can I ask, how has the wider Jewish community responded to your views? Because there is a perception that there is a lot of anti-Israeli and potentially with it anti-Semitic feeling from people of that certain wing of the Labour Party.
OK. I'm going to take a little step back and just point out that since Corbyn's demise and since the leadership of Keir Starmer, Jews have actually faced, Jews with my sort of views, have faced a kind of a purge. So at least 60 people going right through from the Corbyn days when the bureaucracy that sympathises with Starmer was in control, and now under Starmer, we have been either investigated or suspended or actually expelled, in my case and a dozen others, for accusations related to anti-Semitism. People may find this strange because
there is this broad opinion within the party, or within the leadership at the very least, is that if you are Jewish, you have to belong to a certain set of ideological principles, right? Otherwise you're a Gino, a Jew in name only, as people disparagingly call them, in an anti-Semitic manner. Now, what that means is that there is this, again, anti-Semitic trope that they have to be loyal to the state of Israel. Now, you can explicitly see in the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism that the conflation of Jews with the state of Israel, and this belief that they should be more loyal to the state of Israel than their own host country, that is explicitly anti-Semitic as described in the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. And I believe that would be the correct way of being able to define that, because you're trying to hold an entire ethnic group to the standards of that which is set by a country or nation state that some of them never lived in, have no connection to whatsoever, just because it's the ethno-state that represents their ethnicity, when there's no link between these two things altogether.
And the reason that's happening is because the idea that to keep Jews safe, you have to have a sort of unfettered pro-Israeli stance in international political affairs.
I think is it not that actually, support calling Hamas friends?
No, I'm sorry, I don't want to... You're going to turn it back onto allegations that were made against Jeremy.
It's not
all
allegations,
of which...
does it happen?
Yeah, but diplomats always call one another friends.
Not
they
really
mean
terrorists.
But it's all right for our leaders to go and call people like the Saudi leadership friends. That's fine, apparently. So, look,
No, but I'm just saying you can understand that's why people felt as though there were...
I mean, it's just one comment that's been massively extrapolated, completely out of proportion, totally and utterly out of proportion. Because again, she's absolutely right. When you're trying to do diplomacy, you call people friends. If you're trying to engage in some kind of peaceful solution, right? During the Good Friday Agreement process, to try and ensure that the violence ended, was there ever a time in which they just, we cannot negotiate with you, we can't be civil with you because you're on the other side of this discussion? No, they got around the table and then they talk like, unironically talk like adults, and then they've tried to get through a peaceful solution, which you can't do. You can't negotiate in good faith if you're being antagonistic to one of the negotiants. It doesn't make any sense. Like, one comment just massively blown out of proportion.
Anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, that the group of people who have now gone around, potentially beheading babies in Israel.
Careful, Patrick, because that is one of many stories that has come out from the Israeli side, which is doubtful.
Okay.
We can't accept everything that comes
from that
side.
So you genuinely don't think that babies were killed or beheaded by Hamas
I have
in
no
Israel?
idea, Patrick. How would I know? How would you know? I know that the Israelis habitually do lie about these things, but why are we talking about Israel? We're supposed to be talking about keeping Jewish people
I think it's important.
Again, because he conflates Jewish people with the state of Israel. It's as simple as that. That's literally what he's doing now. Deliberately trying to conflate Jewish people with a state that does not represent them, right? The international Jewish community and the state of Israel are not one and the same thing. And this is what Patrick is a trope that he's leaning into. I'm not saying he's doing it deliberately. There's a lot of manufacturing consent over this stuff anyway, right? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that it's not a deliberate attempt at conflating these things. But he's straying into that territory, if you see what I mean.
Get a bit of context about where you kind of stand on certain things, right? So you genuinely do not believe would you call Hamas terrorists?
I'm not going to talk. Let's not talk about that. Let's talk about keeping.
But you still remember that? No, but
you're doing what you do when Palestinian.
To be honest, I'm not really trying to do anything. I think you're doing a lot yourself. I'm genuinely just asking, whether or not the Jewish community should be safe or feel safe in the Labour Party. I think it's really
absolutely. Of course, they can be safe in the Labour Party.
Yeah, but if the Labour Party still supports views, which is why I'm asking these questions, along the lines of not calling Hamas terrorists, maybe even calling them friends.
That's not a view. That is a way of approaching an issue. We have had terrible suffering in Israel and Palestine over the last nearly a fortnight now. All civilian deaths are horrendous, whoever
Are there a lot of people in the Labour Party who feel like you do?
Yeah. Yes, of course there are lots.
And do you think
that's why there are these resignations. That's why there are going to be huge demonstrations at the weekend.
Fine. And so that's my point then. So do you think that...
And lots of them are Jewish, excuse me. I'm going after this... Can I just say?
Yeah.
After this discussion with you. I'm going straight to a demonstration called by a group of young Jews who want to express their horror at the ongoing suffering.
There was literally a protest in America in the Capitol building. Jewish people calling against the occupation, calling against the invasion, calling against the ethnic cleansing, the potential for ethnic cleansing, right? There's a great sign in the protest outside Nancy Pelosi's office that just said genocide is not a Jewish value. And they are against the occupation. They're against what's happening right now. This trope that all Jewish people should have the same ideological principle, which is essentially what Patrick is dog whistling towards here, is fundamentally anti-Semitic. Fundamentally anti-Semitic.
See as ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. And what happened on October the 7th is horrendous and abhorrent. It is. And I'm not going to deny that. But
you are kind of denying it, though, aren't you?
no, but I've said...
Because you are kind of denying... No, but you are kind of... But you are denying what people are saying has happened.
There is a greater context.
Right.
And that Palestinians have been suffering murders and dispossession and torture.
Well, you know what I'm going to ask now. So does that justify the beheading of babies?
No, of course it doesn't. But does the beheading of... Does the beheading of babies justify the which probably didn't happen anyway? Because you're assuming something.
Again, this is this dumbass liberal bumwash that liberals will go through, where they try and assume that whenever you're trying to explain the material conditions that lead to a certain situation, that you're trying to justify it. As Hassan pointed out, referring back to Michael Brooks, analysis is not justification. But dumb brain people like Patrick can't understand a very simple concept like analysing the material conditions to understand where certain situations arise from, right? Do you think that, again, the militants in Palestine just radicalised out of nowhere? Do you think they just decided one day, I'm a bad person who wants to do bad things? No, there were material conditions that led to that place of radicalisation. And to stop people getting radicalised, you have to fix those material conditions. It's very simple.
Something that is not proven.
That is interesting. So you are genuinely on national television completely. So you're going as far as saying it probably didn't happen.
No, I'm not. I'm saying it's not proven.
Right. You did just say it probably.
Considering that we literally have the President of the United States explicitly lying about the whole beheading babies thing, right? He explicitly lied about it, saying he'd seen pictures when he didn't, right? No proof has been provided whatsoever. No proof whatsoever. It's just being used as a way to try and extrapolate a level of disgust, a disgust response, so that people will go against the Palestinians, right? And you can say what you want about what Hamas did, because even if, whether or not they've beheaded babies or not, right? They've already killed children. They've already killed old people. They've already abducted people, old people, children, whatever. Right? They've already done all of this. They don't need to have beheaded babies or not for them to be condemned for their action. You know, hashtag do you condemn Hamas? Let's do the meme all over again. But there is a specific narrative and rhetorical reason why they want to try and find the most disgusting thing possible and then just lie about it. Just like they lied about all of the other things that they've lied about previously. Trying to invoke that disgust response.
No, you did say
not
that. Proven.
Right.
It may not have happened. We do not know whether it happened. If it did happen, and anyway...
Did the moon landing happen?
The slaughter of...
No,
the slaughter of...
I mean, we literally have pictures of the moon landing, Patrick. What a ridiculous comparison.
1,700 Israelis on October the 7th is abhorrent, and it should never have happened. But does it justify the flattening of the entirety of Gaza, the killing now of up to 3,000 Palestinians, the drive to force them out of the territory which they inhabit, because most of them are refugees anyway from the last decades of dispossession from their land. So all I'm asking for is, well, two things really. One is, please don't assume that taking a particular stance on Israel makes Jews in this country safer, because in fact what's happening at the moment is generating a lot of divisiveness and fear among Jews and hatred, and fear among Muslims too, who are being demonised.
Do you think the average Jewish person on the street will take comfort from you saying that your views, which are highly skeptical...
And also, what Patrick is doing here by making this conflation between Jews and the State of Israel makes anti-Semitism worse overall as well. The more that this particular viewpoint gets put into the public consciousness, right, this anti-Semitic viewpoint, that somehow the whole entire international Jewish community should be in some way allied with the State of Israel without any amount of qualification, that makes people who are anti-Semitic more likely to blame individual Jews rather than the State of Israel, or use it as an excuse to increase their level of anti-Semitism. If like a genuine anti-Semitic people are going to be now more likely to commit acts of anti-Semitism if they can have the failure of the state of Israel to be able to blame for it.
Skeptical about a massacre of Jewish babies are prevalent in the Labour Party.
Patrick, I really feel that you're not taking me seriously here in this discussion.
I'm taking you incredibly seriously.
No, because I'm trying to talk about the reality in the Middle East and what that means for Jews in this country, and also the dynamic at the moment in the Labour Party. And the Labour Party's leadership at the moment seems to believe that by taking a certain stance on Israel, it can bring
So what would you
Jews
want them
feel
to say?
safe.
What would you? Okay, so right, what would you want Keir Starmer to have as his stance on this now? Then
I think he should abhor the deaths of all civilians, Jewish and Palestinian. I think he should insist on observing international law, which Israel has never done throughout its occupation of the West Bank, where, by the way, 60 people have been killed this year by Israeli settlers and IDF. They matter too, don't they? Also, the 250 Palestinians who were killed in the West Bank before October the 7th, nothing to do with Hamas, nothing to do with retaliation against that appalling attack.
True.
He should be calling for an immediate ceasefire. He should be calling for meaningful political intervention from the West, which has influence. Nobody else has influence over Israel, only the American government and to some extent European governments, to say you have to end the occupation of the West Bank, you have to end the siege on Gaza, and you have to create a situation where Jews and Palestinians, who are Christian as well as Muslim, by the way, can live in peace and security. If the Labour Party had that position, which I think it would have if Corbyn was still in the leadership, but it doesn't have at the moment, then I think...
But these are all mainstream, normal opinions if you speak to anybody on the street, right? There is nothing outlandish about anything that Naomi is saying here. And may I remind everybody in chat, and people watching this later on when I upload it on YouTube, may I remind you all, this one was kicked off her elected position in the NEC for quote-unquote anti-Semitism, as a Jewish woman holding very rational and reasonable positions on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Apparently this is too far. As a Jewish person herself being kicked out from the NEC, her elected position on the NEC, for holding a position on Israel-Palestine that hundreds of thousands of people who took to the streets also agree with.
I think Jews in this country could feel safer and more confident in their relations with
it is an anecdotal fact, but I think it is a pretty reasonable thing for me to say that the vast majority of Jews do feel safer under Keir Starmer's current policy than they did.
Well, it may be, but
than they did under Jeremy Corbyn.
There's a huge misconception going around that until Jeremy Corbyn came along, all Jews voted Labour. About 15%.
Yeah, certainly not. Yeah,
15% of Jews, roughly, voted Labour when it had a Jewish leader.
Do you think, as a result of what you've come on television and said today, that more or less Jews are going to come out and vote for Labour, having heard what you've said?
I am very critical of the leadership at the moment, and I think...
His wife's Jewish, though, isn't she?
That shouldn't have anything to do with it, should it?
But you would imagine it would influence. But you would imagine it would probably influence his.
In that case, it's influencing him in a very unfortunate way, because if he is using,
Patrick is literally here saying, well, he should be influenced to be more close with Israel because his own wife is Jewish. This is anti-Semitism. This is literally anti-Semitism here. That there should be a certain view on Israel from Keir Starmer because of his own personal relationship with a Jewish woman. Am I going mad? Am I the only person seeing this? Am I actually going insane?
His wife's connection with Israel as a way of helping him decide what his policies are, and he's interpreting...
As opposed to using his connections with Hamas.
As opposed to thinking strategically, as a political leader should, and say,
so
OK...
Jeremy Corbyn was thinking strategically when he was closer with an Islamist terror group.
Jeremy was looking at the situation as it has unfolded over the last 7 decades. He was identifying the root causes, which are, and international institutions agree with this, the illegal occupation.
I'm going to just ask you,
which Keir Starmer is refusing to criticise. So that's why I think there may be many Jews who look at Keir Starmer and say, big friend of Israel, I'm going to vote for him. I think they would be misguided. If that's the kind of leader they want, then they should vote for him, absolutely.
Would you rather live under Hamas or in Israel?
That's such a very foolish question, Patrick. It's really...
This is the kind of journalistic integrity that you get on GB News, chat. This is the kind of journalistic integrity that you get. Oh, I understand there's a bunch of nuance to the situation, but would you like to live under Hamas or Israel? It's so stupid, right? Or whether international law shouldn't apply just because you think one state is better than the other to live in, for example. Whether that should supersede adherence to international law, adherence to human rights, having a moral framework. Again, it's team sports to these people. I am on the team of this country, therefore I will ignore their own human rights abuses. I will ignore international law. I will ignore war crimes. I will ignore occupation, right? I'll ignore all of this stuff if I think that they're the right team doing it.
Right.
Well, of course I wouldn't want to live. I'm not an Islamist fundamentalist, am I?
Okay.
But it's not... Do you think that by going in and flattening the entirety of Gaza, driving the entire population into the desert, which is what is going to happen now, that will solve the problem? Of course it won't. There will always be Palestinian resistance.
Okay.
There will always be... And it takes a form last Saturday, which was hateful. Usually it takes the form of demonstrators who were shot dead at the border of Gaza.
Really? Yeah, they actually tried peaceful demonstration, and then what happened? Snipers shot people's kneecaps off.
Last summer. Or it takes the form of people wanting to boycott Israel, which is peaceful and entirely legitimate, and being told that that should be illegal because it's anti-Semitic. It is not anti-Semitic to try and seek peace, justice and equality for everybody in the Middle East. That's what we want Keir Starmer to do. If he does it, I would say Jews and everybody should support him. Until he does, I'm dubious.
Well, I must say, I have found this fascinating. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate that kind of robust
Yeah, of course you found it fascinating because you're speaking with someone whose IQ is in triple digits.
discussion. It's been interesting to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much. And enjoy the demonstration you're going to, or the gathering that you're going to. There you go. Yes, OK. All right. Well, there we go.
Well, he got absolutely clowned on there. Naomi's really, really good. I'm glad that we found that little segment to watch, which I'll definitely upload later. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.